Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ethelor Plays Go. Today, we're doing the second lesson in my series on learning how to play the game. In the last lesson, in Lesson 1, we learned about Capture, Liberties, and Atari Go. And I didn't tell the whole story because I want to teach this game a little bit step by step in a way that's is closer to how people teach this game in real life. Um, so there are a couple of details that I missed, which you may, if you decided to play some Atari Go with a friend, you may have noticed. And we'll go over some of those instances right now. So let's look at the game example that I showed last time, and say we come to this board position, where white captures this black stone. Remember that if there's one liberty, that's called being an Atari, and if white captures or plays this last liberty, then that means that they capture the stone. Say that black says, oh, I'm going to try and keep my two black stones connected, and plays e2. Then, say white plays Atari again, aiming to capture this black stone. One thing that black can do is capture to make sure that, to prevent that from happening. With this empty intersection in the center, all of these square stones are connected, in a sense. Even if they're not directly connected, they don't share liberties, white can't necessarily separate them. Or can white? Well, here's the issue, is that white can recapture, isn't it? And then black can recapture again, and white can recapture, and black can recapture, and white. So this creates a conundrum. What do we do with this kind of position where we have this infinite recapturing sequence, where if either player really insists without playing away, the game will just never finish, because there is this infinitely repeating position? Well, maybe if you have an infinitely repeating position in a game, that might be a little bit difficult to deal with. And so, what do you do? So we can come up with a couple of rules. For instance, we might say, oh, well, if we get a repeating position like this, the game is annulled. It's a draw. That's not a result that we're super happy with. With the rules of the game of Go, they're created to try and prevent draws, and draws are something that happen very rarely in a game. Say you have like some special positions, but so we want to prevent that. So how about we have another rule where we say we can't have a repeating board position that happened from the previous move. So for instance, if black captures, then we can't go, because this was the previous board state, we can't go immediately back to it. So we need to play another move. Say for instance, white plays somewhere else on the board. When we're on a board like this, playing on another part of the board like this, it's not necessarily like a move we want to play. It just represents playing a move elsewhere. And say black responds. Now that we have two moves that were played somewhere else, finally we can recapture the stone. And once again, black plays somewhere else, white plays somewhere else, and then we can recapture. This shape here is what we call the Ko rule, where we don't necessarily repeat the board position infinite times, and we try to alter the board position to prevent this kind of infinitely repeating sequence that would lead to a draw or an annulling of the game. So in practice, what this might look like is, say white plays something like f7. What this does is it says, hey, I'm going to try and capture this square stone right here by playing A. And what black has to do then is evaluate the worth of A against connecting at B or playing some other move. So what black may do is say, oh, I'm going to defend this, then white will get to recapture, and the Ko continues. There can be another threat. Say, for instance, white captures here, then white will have to consider either recapturing here or connecting the stone. Meanwhile, say that black doesn't play f8 and instead resolves the Ko by connecting. Well, then white gets to play again and play f8 to capture. Who is this better for? It's difficult. Ko is something that's quite difficult to evaluate, even as you approach relatively advanced play. This means that I don't expect you to understand all the intricacies about this at the moment, or how to evaluate it, what moves to play. Don't worry about it. That's something you will learn later. All I mean to say is that we don't have this repeating position here, and instead we play moves elsewhere on the board to prevent that from happening. And so that's one of the rules that if you play Capture Go, you will need in order to make sure that you don't get annulled or drawn games. Now, the second thing that we might want to mention is, say we're playing a handicap game. Go is quite interesting in that it actually allows for handicaps, where if where black gets a set of stones already on the board, and those are meant to assist black in making territory and fighting. Say that white plays e3, which is a common way to start the game, and let's say that black tries to seal white in, just surrounding in this kind of way. And white, let's just say white doesn't play anywhere else. This is not how you would expect a normal handicap game to go. Normally, white will play on other parts of the board, but let's just say that everybody keeps playing in this local area. Um, so what happens now when white has liberties on the outside all filled and one liberty on the inside? So once again, we have to decide about what we're going to do about this. So what I'm trying to do is introduce the concept of life and death. So when are a set of stones permanently on the board, or when can they be removed? In the game, the rule is that if you would capture it or would put in this last fill in this last liberty, then you capture the set of stones. This is something that's a little bit confusing to people at first, but this is basically we've set it up so you could create a rule where where black was not allowed to play inside e2, and that would be permanently alive as it is, and you could never remove it from the board. That's another way you could play Go. You could arbitrarily choose that in another way, but that's not the rule that we have. If you would play that last intersection, then even if it's in the center of an eye, this is what we call it, this E2 space in the middle is what we call an eye, that would capture. So if that's true, then doesn't that mean that as the game goes on, we'll fill up all of the liberties? And what we do instead is we try and say, okay, in order for a group to not be removed from the board, you need to be able to make these two intersections here. So this is called having two eyes. This is called being alive. This is because black is not able to play in this E2 area. And if I try, then the game editor will say, you're about to play a suicide move, which is invalid in some rule sets. Basically, I don't know. I don't know. As I mentioned, you could construe the game such that it's somehow a valid move. Or I guess here, if there are two eyes, and it would always be a bit awkward, because say black could play there, and if you play the move anyway, it's a bit confused because it doesn't even play the stone, and it immediately captures it because black doesn't have any liberties. So yeah, it's a bit weird. So that's the other thing that I wanted to say, because if you play Capture Go, you'll come across these kinds of situations, and it's good to know how we plan to resolve them. So okay, now that we have this idea of alive versus being dead, now we can come to the idea of territory. And I waited a little while to talk about what territory was, because territory is innately linked with this concept of what stays on the board and what doesn't. So say we have this kind of game where we have just two lines of stones going across this 9x9 board, and we come to the end of the game. Let's say that neither player captured any stones. We don't see any shapes where that indicates any stones were captured. And indeed, both players just played in a straight line across. So who wins? So once again, we want to try and get rid of some of these instances where things would be drawn, because that's just not fun. We want to know who wins and who loses. So what you can say is, okay, well, we'll say that this is black's area, and black somehow has 3 times 9 times 1, 2, plus 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 5. So 3 times 9 is 27, plus 3 is 30, plus 2 is 32. So black has 32 points. And white has the same, except has 4 here instead of 5. So we can say that white has 31 points and is losing by 1 point. Now here's the big issue. Say that we're black. Maybe we can play a move like this. Maybe we can try and force white to connect these two. So let's say white connects, and then let's say that black gets another move. how do we know that these points really belong to white? And you can see that this all comes down to whether these two stones here will eventually live, whether or not in our example here, whether or not they can make two eyes. And so this is why this idea of territory, who wins based on who is able to surround more points and who's more captures in the end. This all comes down to being able to understand, do these stones get removed or not? So say white plays something like here, connects under, black is surrounded. I can say from here that black won't, given good play, black won't necessarily be able to make two eyes here. These stones will then get captured at the end of the game, and when we're counting, what we do is we remove these stones. So let's say these get captured because they don't necessarily make two eyes. And what we can do is we take these three stones and move them over here, because that doesn't change the total. And then we had, how many stones did we have? We had 4 stones. So then we fill them into black's area here. So here now we have 27 points for white, and still 27 plus 1, that's 28 points. So although the total number of points went down, the difference is still the same. So this shows that you can try doing these based on the way how we're counting the game. You can do these kinds of invasions and die, and given that the area would have been white's anyway, you might not lose any points. This isn't always true, but depending on when you do these invasions, so if you do them late in the game, it's more likely to be fine, or more likely to not incur a loss for you, but you being as black. But yeah, so these are basically some details which I failed to mention because they can be a little bit confusing to other players. So sometimes when I explain Ko to people, they really struggle with understanding it. And basically the idea is just to prevent this kind of repeating board position, as I've said. And we need some rules to handle when we can capture stones and when we can't. Otherwise, we don't know what is on the board infinitely and what isn't. And with this understanding, we can come to the end of the game. We can know what things stay on and what things don't, and then we can remove them, move the stones around, and come to counting the board. And now you finally do understand how to play a full game of Go. So consider having Capture Go with these extra rules, and then make it so that the extra stone that you can capture arbitrary amounts of stones. Then that will basically give you the whole game. And so now you're ready to go play online or against a computer. That's something that we'll talk more about in the next games. There are some interesting shapes that we can talk about. We can talk about improving our skills at understanding when shapes are live or dead. And all of this will make your Go playing more developed. Once again, don't expect to understand everything straight away. Go is very much a game where you play and you don't have the full picture. You don't understand everything, and that's just going to stay that way until you become a very, very advanced player. Once again, it's all about learning to be comfortable with the things that you don't understand and just trying to have fun anyway. So thank you for coming by to this lesson. I hope you come by next time as well. And yeah, if you enjoyed these videos, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all soon.